Are you a tiger parent or gentle parent? That is the parenting cultural clash that no one talks about. One parenting style is all about discipline, hard work, and respect for the parent. The other is all about empathy, emotional connection, and respect for the child. So who's right? Well, I'm a Chinese mom raising two trilingual kids in the UK. I grew up with classic Chinese parenting, but recently I read the Gentle Parenting book by Sarah Ockwell-Smith, and it kind of blew my mind in both good ways and not so good ways. Let's talk about the parenting clash that's happening inside so many of us and what I have learned from both sides. Hi everyone, my name is Kayi. I'm a Cambridge graduate, a UK-based mom of two, and I make videos all about raising multilingual and multicultural children. A little while ago, I made a video called 5 Chinese Parenting Secrets Western Parents Don't Talk About. And it really struck a chord. So many of you resonated with the values I talked about, especially if you are navigating life between cultures like I am. But since then, I've gone deeper down the rabbit hole. I read Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother by Amy Chua and made a whole video sharing my honest reaction to it. I'll link it here if you haven't seen it. And then I read the Gentle Parenting book by Sarah Ockwell-Smith, which honestly is like the complete opposite in every way. And that whole experience, reading both books, reflecting on my own upbringing, and looking at how I parent today, really made me stop and ask, how do I reconcile these two very different parenting styles? The fierce discipline and high expectations of Chinese parenting versus the softness, empathy, and emotional awareness of gentle parenting. This video is my attempt to explore that tension and share what I have learned along the way. This video is divided into 4 parts. In part 1, I'll break down what gentle parenting actually is. In part 2, I will dive into the parts in the book that I strongly disagree with. In part 3, I'll share the parts that I genuinely love. And finally, in part 4, we'll explore the tension between Chinese parenting and gentle parenting, and how we might begin to reconcile the two. If you're already familiar with the Gentle Parenting book and philosophy, feel free to jump ahead to part 4. So part 1, what is gentle parenting? Before we get into my reaction, here's a quick overview of what gentle parenting actually is, just in case you're new to the concept. While the ideas behind gentle parenting have been around for a while, Sarah Ockwell-Smith is often credited with coining the actual term. Her books, especially the Gentle Parenting book, have helped define and popularize the movement, so much so that some people see her work as the go-to guide for this approach. So when I talk about gentle parenting in this video, I'm referring to the concepts in Ockwell-Smith's book. At its core, gentle parenting is about building a strong connection with your child. It's rooted in empathy, emotional regulation, and treating children with the same respect we expect as adults. In theory, it's not about permissiveness or letting kids run wild. It's about understanding the why behind their behavior and guiding them with compassion, not control. Sounds lovely, right? And honestly, a lot of it is. Before I read the book, I was a bit skeptical about the whole premise of gentle parenting, but was then surprised to find myself nodding along furiously as I read the book. But then some parts of this book really challenged me, especially coming from a Chinese upbringing where discipline, respect, and academic achievement were seen as non-negotiable. What do I mean by that? That takes us to part 2. Alright, let's get into the juicy stuff. The bits of the book that left me going, what the heck? First up, the author thinks that duvet days are totally okay if your child doesn't feel like going to school. Yes, really. The author talks about letting your child stay home from school just because they don't feel like going to school. The author's rationale is that we adults are entitled to duvet days, so why not children? Oh, I'm sorry, but what the heck? I could not disagree more. Firstly, I absolutely disagree that it's okay for adults to take days off work just because they feel like it. Look, I've been self-employed for 10 years now, so I can, technically take time off whenever I feel like it. But certainly when I was an employee, I never thought that I could just take a duvet day off just because I woke up one day and thought, oh, the bed feels really nice. I don't feel like getting up today. Let me just ping my boss and ask for a duvet day. In fact, as a freelancer now, I routinely work weekends and always work when I'm away on holiday. Because, well, HMRC, aka the tax authorities, won't care whether or not I feel like working or not. The taxman will be coming after me regardless. And before anyone attacks me, let me make it clear that I think it's 100% acceptable and indeed necessary to take sick days off or compassionate leave if, say, someone close to you dies or something. Sure, but just because you don't feel like it, what does that even mean? So the author's stance on this really made me think that certain standards have slipped. Here's my Chinese parenting perspective jumping in. Look, my grandmother in China worked 2 factory jobs to support her huge family. She worked like 18-hour days. She had the luxury of taking a duvet day and losing a day's wage just because she didn't feel like it one morning? As a society, have we become so entitled that we think we deserve a duvet day as an employee? Rant over for now. You might argue that, well, maybe children are different, but actually no, I kind of disagree. Remember, the values we teach our children are the values that will shape their values as adults and who they become as adults. In Chinese parenting, the idea that you will let your child bunk off school just because they don't feel like going to school is frankly unthinkable. You go to school, show up, period. Even if you don't feel like it. The thing is, feelings are real, but they come and go. Look, my son tells me he doesn't feel like going to school sometimes, that school is boring. Is it really responsible for me to tell him, okay, sweetie, you don't have to go to school if you don't feel like it today? And guess what? Once he's at school, he always enjoys being there, spending time with his friends, learning new things. Again, before anyone attacks me, I must emphasize that if my child is actually ill, has genuine reason to be upset about something, like if a close family member or a pet dies, then sure, we all need time to recover, to regain our physical and mental health. A line has to be drawn somewhere, in my opinion. And to me, I don't feel like it is on the wrong side of that line. Sorry, Sarah Ockwell-Smith, I love many aspects of your parenting philosophy, but you really lost me when you made the duvet day argument. Next, in chapter 6 of the book, the author argues that it's okay for toddlers to throw food because, in her words, they are just exploring gravity. Look, I get it, toddlers are learning, they are testing boundaries. But honestly, if my daughter had thrown a bowl of rice on the floor and I just went like, oh sweetie, you're learning about physics, my mom would have had a heart attack. To me, that felt too permissive. There's a line between respecting children's curiosity and letting them run the show. I personally don't see why we can't gently tell a toddler not to throw food on the floor and maybe encourage them to explore gravity in more appropriate ways and contexts. Next up, in chapter 7, Sarah Ockwell-Smith argues that homework is unnecessary in the early years. Okay, I know there's quite a lot of research backing up this idea. Early childhood researchers emphasize play-based learning and emotional readiness, and they argue that too much emphasis on academic work can cause stress in young children. But, and this is a big but, as a Chinese mom, I still believe that a bit of structure and routine lays the foundation for discipline and resilience. At home, we do 30 minutes of reading and writing in Chinese and Russian every evening, even though their school doesn't set homework. We started with 15 minutes a day, or maybe 10, when the kids were 3 or maybe 4. And you know what? It's made a big difference. It hasn't harmed them in any way. Trust me, if you meet my kids, you'll see that they're really happy and well-balanced children. And I'm not just saying that myself. I really think You will see that for yourself if you meet them. In fact, I argue that our routine made them more confident and more resilient. What's more, I also read something really interesting about this recently. Nordic countries known for their free-range, play-based early years are now starting to reintroduce more structured academic time in preschool, inspired by the long-term benefits seen in Asian education systems. For example, Finland and Sweden have recognized a need for more formal reading and math earlier on. Sweden is even planning to start formal primary education at age 6 instead of 7, bringing in handwriting, pen and paper work, and basic academics, moving away from pure play-based models. So yes, the science says children benefit from play, but emerging data from these high-performing countries suggest that a gentle blend of play and structured learning in the early years may be the sweet spot. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Simple routines at home that build discipline without too much pressure, and still plenty of time to play. And also, focus on effort, not outcome. And I truly believe it's setting them up for success down the road. And finally, there's one theme that runs through the entire gentle parenting book that I have a problem with. Sarah Ockwell-Smith places a huge emphasis on validating every single feeling your child experiences. Anger, sadness, frustration, boredom, all of it. Or that's how I interpret it. The message seems to be, all feelings are valid, always acknowledge, always empathize. And yes, to a large extent, I kind of agree. Emotions are important. Children do need to feel seen and heard. Emotional regulation starts with connection. While I agree with all of that, I can't help but feel that the author overdoes it. At times it feels like feelings are treated as sort of sacred above everything else. And that concerns me, because doesn't it risk teaching children that their emotions should always take center stage? That the moment they feel bored or frustrated, the world should pause? And that's not how life works. Sometimes you just have to do the thing, even when it feels uncomfortable. That's a huge part of building resilience. Actually, I posted a YouTube short a while ago showing how I handled a moment when my son was distracted and bored during a Chinese study session. And a few were commented saying something like, "Why don't you try to figure out why he's distracted? Are you saying he's not allowed to feel bored? You're going to push him away." And I get where he or she is coming from. But here's the thing. For me, it's not hard to see why he's distracted. It's because learning Chinese isn't quite as stimulating or fun as playing Minecraft. That's it, right? He doesn't get distracted when he's doing something fun. So clearly, he can concentrate when he wants to. But should I let him skip language practice every time he feels bored? Just to validate that emotion? No, because boredom is part of life. Learning hard things, especially a language like Chinese, isn't always fun. And I do try to make it fun as much as I can. I made a separate video about it if you want to check it out. And okay, maybe you don't agree that my son needs to learn Chinese. Fair enough. But what about maths, English, science? Should he skip these as well just because he is bored? Also, I believe it's precisely in those moments that we teach kids the value of persistence. And actually, the idea that an overemphasis on emotions can have negative effects is increasingly backed up by research. A 2021 study found that constantly validating distress without teaching coping skills can lead to lower emotional resilience over time. Kids who were overly shielded from discomfort were more likely to become anxious and overwhelmed by everyday challenges. Another paper in Psychological Science pointed out that over-parenting emotional experiences can create what psychologists call emotional dependency, where children expect to be soothed from the outside rather than learning to self-regulate. And there's a related idea that really resonates with me. Emotional entitlement, the belief that your feelings should always be prioritized no matter what. If we're not careful, I think this is what can accidentally develop when we overemphasize validation. So yes, I will always acknowledge my children's emotions. I really always do that. But I also teach them that while feelings are real, they come and go. and they shouldn't rule us. You can feel bored and still finish your homework. You can feel tired and still get up and show up. There's a fine line between nurturing emotional awareness and teaching emotional entitlement. And for me, that line really matters. Let's be fair, there's a lot that I loved about this book too. The part about breaking generational cycles really resonated with me. The author talks about how parenting is deeply shaped by how we were parented ourselves, and that each generation has a chance to start fresh. This really resonated with me because, well, I touched on the idea of generational trauma in my video where I shared my reactions to Amy Chua's book. Without going into too much detail, my family has its fair share of generational trauma, typical of many Chinese families. My mum was raised in a harsh way, but no one can blame her mum really, because my maternal grandmother had the harshest childhood and upbringing you can imagine. I don't want to go into too much personal detail, but trust me when I say it was harsh. This was China in the early 20th century, amidst unimaginable social turmoil. So I really feel the weight of generational trauma, which is why I love how the author of Gentle Parenting gives us hope with the idea of breaking that generational cycle through practicing gentle parenting. And I love the author's idea that emotional regulation starts with the parent, not the child. That was powerful and really resonated with me. As I alluded to in my previous video about the Tiger Mom book, I used to be snappy and frazzled all the time. It all came to a head last year when I had a bit of a burnout/meltdown situation, which is when I discovered the principles of CBT and began to educate myself about emotional awareness and stuff. This awareness, along with other tools such as journaling and mindful meditation, have helped me become so much calmer. And you know what? It has changed everything in our home. Calmer parents make for calmer children. So my personal experience has really made me appreciate the author's emphasis on parental emotional regulation. I also appreciated the emphasis on connection. She emphasizes spending quality time with your child and fostering a real connection. In my experience, this is absolutely true. When I'm more present with my kids, when we spend more quality time together, everything, and I mean everything, flows so much more smoothly. Everyone is happier, more productive, more creative. So yes, I love the author's emphasis on connection and can see the impact this has in my own family life. So what does it all mean for me and others like me who are straddling two cultures, two parenting philosophies? So, Part 4, let's talk about the internal clash I feel as a Chinese parent raising kids here in the West. On one hand, I'm very much a product of tiger parenting. Maybe not as extreme as Amy Chua's version, but still, I grew up with discipline, routine, and really high expectations. That parenting style got me into Cambridge. It gave me grit, and honestly, I'm thankful for it. But on the other hand, gentle parenting has taught me things I never got as a child. Emotional awareness, connection, respect for my children's inner world helped me break some harmful patterns and really see my children as individuals. And that's why I don't think we need to choose one side or the other. Because when you take the best of both, something really powerful can happen. Here are 4 simple ways I myself am blending these two philosophies in real life. 1, I lead with empathy, but I still follow through with boundaries. If my child says, I don't want to do my homework, I'm bored, I don't dismiss that feeling. I might say something like, I know it's tough. Sometimes I don't want to work either. Then I might say something like, let's take a break and then come back to it, because it still needs to get done. So in short, validate the feeling, but keep the boundary. I prioritize connection, but we still have daily routines and expectations. In our home, we have 30 minutes of reading and writing in Chinese and Russian each day. It's non-negotiable, but we also make it an opportunity to connect. I sometimes tell them stories from my childhood inspired by something we read in a book. I also let the children have some say in what we do. For example, right now, we are building a website together, but incorporating Chinese learning into it. So connection and daily routines can in fact coexist. In short, structure doesn't have to feel overly restrictive. We can reframe it as a way to build connection and have quality time together even. 3, modeling emotional regulation myself, but also resilience. When I'm stressed or frustrated, I talk about it, not in an overly dramatic way, but calmly. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, so I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. I might even tell them that I'm going to meditate, which I often do. In fact, my children sometimes meditate with me. Same time, when I push through something hard, I tell them, that wasn't easy, but I did it anyway because it aligns with my goal in life. In short, realizing that we are role models for our kids and modeling the right values. I praise effort, not outcome. Traditionally, Chinese parenting was very outcome-based, outcome-focused. Children only got praised for getting A+++. In our household, we have evolved from that, I hope. We praise effort instead. So that time my son pushed through our Chinese study session despite his initial boredom, I said to him, I'm really proud of you for pushing through, even though you didn't feel like it at first. I always knew you are so capable. In short, focus on encouraging effort, which is ultimately what we can control. Okay, so going back to that clash, I guess I'm not a tiger mom, and I'm not a gentle mom. Or maybe you can say I'm both. Or maybe I'm somewhere in the middle. I feel like I am trying my best to raise kind, confident, multilingual, multicultural children who know that they are deeply loved unconditionally, but who also understand that life takes effort. If this resonates with you, I would love to explore this more in future videos, from real-life tips to cultural reflections to practical parenting tools that help bridge the East-West parenting divide. Let me know in the comments if that is something you would find helpful. Also share in the comments, what was your upbringing like? And crucially, what will you do differently as a parent? Let's keep the conversation going. And of course, if you are raising multilingual, multicultural kids like I am, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you'll see more content like this in the future. Now head over to my video where I reveal the 5 Chinese parenting secrets that Western parents don't talk about. I'll see you there.